Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Needs Some Introduction. In this podcast, we are watching something week to week, introducing all of you, hopefully, to something new or something you're watching, and providing you some context and some camaraderie along the way. My name is Victor, and I'm joined again here by Darren.
G'day, Victor.
And Darren, we have gotten to the end. We've come to the end of Andor.
We have.
Episode 10, 11, and 12. Started seeing the ratings come in. Maybe I'll follow up on this. I'm very curious to see if this grows over the course of the run here. Last week's episodes were the actual number of minutes. The way that Nielsen reports this on streaming is the actual number of minutes watched. So it actually scored pretty highly. When you consider they dropped for 3 pretty long episodes, you got to take everything with a grain of salt. But I am curious to see the numbers when they come in and illuminate the same one of the streaming ratings companies. They actually showed the ratings for all of the previous Star Wars shows. And the shocking thing is that Andor season 1, and I do hope this has grown over time, but Andor season 1 had underperformed even beneath The Acolyte, which was, and even beneath like Secret Invasion, which is the most unsuccessful of the Marvel series also. So, which is to say, by the way, it's still one of the bigger shows that came out that year, of course, because it's a Star Wars show, right? But it's, when you think about the amount of money they're spending, probably not what they wanted from a financial standpoint. But I have a feeling this show will grow because we've come to the end here. And what an amazing, I had speculated last week on, well, maybe we're just going to come like right up against Rogue One. And as I was saying that, I almost cut myself off because I'm like, I don't know if I really want to see that. And that is exactly what we got. And it was very satisfying. I was, they still are, even as they're able to cut this slice of cake smaller and smaller and smaller, getting into the minutia, amazingly, turns out to be pretty satisfying as is along the way. And so overall, I didn't think this was as satisfying as last week's 3 episodes, which I think is probably the highlight for me of the entire series. But this is a much quieter, but really satisfying 3 episodes and really ties together a lot of the themes in the show. So what did you think of these 3 episodes?
Oh, I absolutely loved these 3 episodes. I thought they were the best of the series, and I was just blown away by just the depth of thought about what goes on in these episodes. And I mean, we can talk about them all separately. We can talk about so much. There's so much to talk about. Tell me, when you finished these 3, did you press play on Rogue One straight after?
I did watch Rogue One last night. I actually was planning on watching only maybe half of Rogue One, and I ended up watching the whole thing. I watched Rogue One all the way through, and I do have thoughts on Rogue One. And I know you just watched it recently as well, because I was surprised at my experience of watching Rogue One. But we'll leave that for separate conversation. There's plenty of talking about right here, just in these 3 episodes alone. But I do want to carve out a few minutes to discuss that at the end, because it was an interesting experience.
Yeah, even though I'd watched it last week, I still pressed play and watched the start of Rogue One just to see how they bound it together so beautifully, and the characters just basically stepped off the set of Andor straight into the next scene.
The sets, they were discussing this on another podcast I was listening to briefly right before we started recording, but they the same costumes, obviously the same hairstyles, like combed the same way, like it was like they matched up everything, lined it up perfectly with the next with the Rogue One.
Yeah, just beautiful. So I watched these back to back, and I was blown away. Like I said, I mean, I was having a heart attack at the start of episode 10 with this first 15 minutes, and with Clea, and the realization that Clea is now the big player in these 3 episodes, and you could just see her come to the fore. And I was just waiting. I've been waiting for that for a couple of years to see more of her. And I was having a heart attack watching Luthen in the situation that he was in, and oh my God, it was intense.
What did you think of this reveal here about Luthen's backstory? Not only about his relationship with Clea, obviously that this paternal relationship they had, but even that he was an Imperial soldier and wouldn't participate in this execution of these civilians. I guess she was one of them. So he was part of the Imperial Guard that massacred her family, I presume, or at least the people in her village. And I guess at this point we're inferring a lot of this, but they run off together. I guess he abandons the empire at that point, and they start this collaboration between each other. I should say this collaboration between the two of them, and he is grooming her, or that has a negative connotation nowadays, but he's coaching her and training her on the ways of this stealth type of fighting. I thought this was so interesting, and I have actually been critical of him as a character and wondered what the show was trying to say about him. And we do see him murder an innocent person here who's actually trying to help them. But all of that, in general, I think this is a redemption arc for him in these final 3 episodes.
Yeah, it was incredible. I loved seeing him broken inside that ship. I just wanted to see outside the ship what was going on, what was the battle that was going on. But obviously, they did not show us that. We just could hear the horror that was going on beyond the walls of that ship, and just to see him as a broken man.
And he's just saying, "Make it stop!" Right? That's the literally the title of the episode. And he's just saying, "Make it stop! Make it stop!"
Wow. Yeah, it's stunning. And there is obviously there's this theme of orphans in Star Wars, and then there's the theme of the Master and the Padawan, and all through the movies and TV series, and this continues it again, but in a really beautiful way. And the fact that Clea teaches him things as well as he teaches her thing, and the fact that she's almost the boss, she's almost leading him out of this distress that he's been in. It's just stunning.
In that first episode, it's really fascinating. At one point I was wondering, are they trying to indicate that she's been the mastermind all this time and he, was just the front? But I think what you're seeing there is exactly like you described. I think that he's recognizing that she is now in control, that she has learned everything she can from him, and she has become his master to some extent, like you mentioned. So he offers to stay behind when he knows that inevitably his front is going to fall, and they need to clean up behind themselves, to destroy these breadcrumbs that could lead to the rebel location. And he offers to stay behind, and of course she does. Clea pushes back, but eventually does accept this. And then there's an absolutely incredible scene where Dedra shows up to have her like Moriarty and Holmes confrontation with him. But she should have brought, she ends up getting arrested as a traitor because she didn't bring backup. But she did make the wrong move here, right? She wanted the glory for herself, or at least to have this confrontation, even if it wasn't a public glory. And she played her hand badly, right? He almost kills himself at that moment. And of course, he's been, while he keeps her distracted, he's actually destroying the evidence back behind the stage.
Oh, look, it's not often that I scream at a TV screen, but my God, when he opened the door, put on the smile, and she's standing there, it's like, it reminded me of the scene in Heat with De Niro and Pacino finally meeting after all this time. Just brilliant dialogue. How the hubris that she shows, that she thinks she's just got him. She's just great. Like that's what brings it her ultimate downfall, and that he knows that he's playing a role as well. But they both know that they are finally seeing each other for the first time. Stunning. I mean, I keep using this word. I mean, I'm going to really struggle to analyze these 3 scenes because it was just pure emotion. I loved it so much. And yeah, Dedra I was worried that she was going to disappear from the series, but she plays a big role in this episode and the next episode. Yeah, she's just killing it. And poor old Luthen using that knife on himself was heartbreaking as well.
There's a great bit of dialogue where she's asking him, "Is everything real?" And he goes, "Well, some of them, we're not sure if they're real or not." And he pulls out that blade, of course, and he goes, "It's extremely rare." And she goes, "Is it real?" And he's just like, "Well," which is an interesting metaphor for his whole persona, right? Like, how much of this is real, how much of it is not. And of course, whether it's real or not, it still functions as a blade because that's what he uses to try to kill himself with. And then, like, yeah, she miscalculates. He almost dies. And
Mm.
then we have the next episode, which is basically there seems to be there's one action packed episode in each one of these cycle of three. This is the big action episode, but it is a pretty low key. This is my preferred type of action anyway. This is more like a Mission Impossible type or spy thriller type action where you create a distraction, you get into the building, you can only get to level 7, so they have to like sneak up the stairs to level 9. All of that stuff is great. It's like playing a stealth video game. And we see that Clea has this incredible, not only is she very proficient and able to navigate that and knows where the cameras are and hides her face, although they still are able to identify her in the end. But of course, she then goes and does exactly what Luthen would have wanted her to do to unplug him. And they have that very sweet moment, which is about as much emotion as Clea can muster, I guess. She's very hardened by this very, very rough road they've been on this whole time.
It was so beautiful, and I really enjoyed the way that the ISB guys were like, "Oh, we think that there was 3 people to be
Yeah.
able to infiltrate this facility. You need 3 people," but she did it all by herself. And the way that this show just makes a liar of me. I mean, last episode we talked about. Well, I talked about how they don't fetishize the aliens so much. We got some great aliens in these 3 episodes.
Yeah, there's a lot more than I think I've seen before.
Yeah, and they were fantastic, and they worked so well. And I mean, to have just the comedy of her wheeling the old granny through the to be able to get to the next level was just so funny. But yeah, Claire's amazing, and it was a really poignant finish for Luthen. He didn't wake up and say any words. It just kind of faded to black at the end of that episode, and it was just yeah, such good television.
Yeah, I was wondering if there would be something really corny like that he would suddenly wake up as he was dying and forgive her or something like that, but no, and which is the way this show is in general, and she really carries all that emotional weight and does it really amazingly.
Mm. Yeah, she does. I'm a massive fan of this actress now. I've never heard of her before. I've
I
never
know, I
seen
haven't
her
seen her
in
in
anything,
anything. Yeah,
but I think she's going to be a big star.
yeah. Hopefully, she gets a lot of work from this. Let me circle back to one thing because I find it really fascinating to think this is maybe one of the big themes of these 3 episodes that we see Lonnie. It's just so much complexity just in this one thing. We could probably talk about the whole hour we have here on just this one point, which is Lonnie goes and presents this information to Luthen. He knows that this is basically that pretty much all of these different arcs in all of Andor, I believe, have all been part of one thing, which was the making of the Death Star. So now we know that all these different things that have been going on are actually the one thing, which then suddenly makes sense. Of course, we've been following Andor, mostly Andor, but not only Andor, throughout the course of this series. But now we see that that's what all these different through lines tying together was the creation of the Death Star, which of course we never see until I mean, now I'm forgetting if we see it at all here. I don't think so, right? I'm confusing it with Rogue One, which of course we do.
No, we do see it. We see
at the
it
very
right
end,
at
right?
the end.
Yeah,
Yeah, we do. Yeah, because I yelled out again.
I got confused as to whether I saw that now or in Rogue One, considering I saw them like right at the same time.
Yeah.
But Lonnie dies for this. Do you think that Lonnie's family gets rescued by this? Because Luthen like kills him on that park bench, and I do hope, because I mean, like, I don't know if the Empire is going to question that family and torture them, but hopefully Luthen does at least rescue the family.
No, he doesn't. Luthen has killed the family by shooting and killing Lonnie.
Exactly.
The family will get caught up by the ISB very quickly. Yeah, unfortunately. As soon as Luthen said the word Yavin, where he gave up where the rebels were,
Good
he just
point.
knew that Lonnie needed to disappear.
That's a good point. Yeah, he would never have said that because, even when other people have arrived at Yavin, they don't know they're at Yavin until they get there. No one mentions that place until they get there.
Yeah, and it was stunning. I mean, I love Lonnie as a character in the way that he just spills everything. You don't see him defect. He's just on that park bench, spills everything to Luthen, and Luthen's like, right, okay, well, this is where you end. This is probably where I end as
Right,
well, because
right.
I've finally got this information. That's what I've been searching for. And I mean, I just want to call out the direction as well. I mean,
Yeah.
these three directors that they've had for this series, I've never heard of them before. I think the first guy was an Australian guy. I looked him up. He'd done some spy thriller a few years ago. The direction never got in the way.
Right.
It was never too flashy. It was just in service of the story, in service of the script. And when Luthen walked away from Lonnie, and there was just this shot of him walking down the stairs, and it was just on a bit of an angle. It was just like the world had turned. It was just so striking to me. I just loved it so much.
Yeah, really impressive. The director here for these 3 episodes, Alonso Ruiz Palacios, which again, never heard of
Nice.
this person before. He actually has a movie that just premiered on Mubi this week. Maybe I'll check it out. But it's nothing like this at all. It's about a romance in a kitchen in New York City, all shot in black and white, which I've heard very good things about. La Cucina. And anyway, I've heard good things about it. Played some film festivals last year. But just to speak to the fact that the directors of these this series have not really been the type of people who've made these giant blockbusters before, and maybe that's all intentional. The people they're picking to focus on character and not so much on the special effects, which I'm sure there is a whole machine that is generating
Yeah.
these incredible images, and that's probably there's probably a whole other team that's managing most of that stuff. So maybe smart to focus on the characters with these directors that are mostly have worked on these quieter dramas.
Mm.
But back to I keep wanting to go back to that the piece of information that we have here, which is so fascinating. That first of all, we find out Lonnie's had this information. He's been, infiltrated Dedra's computer for a long time now, has been watching all this information come in, but never mentioned it to Luthen because he knew, and he's probably right, that Luthen would be like, we have to use this to our advantage, like immediately. And he's like, no, we need to wait. We need to wait to get that big piece of information. We can't play our hand too early. They'll know we're watching them, right? And he waited and waited and waited and got this big piece of information. Luthen, annoyed by this, but then realizes that this is really important piece of information. And at that moment, pretty much knows that he will sacrifice his life to get this out. And then, of course, that information, he does sacrifice himself. And then Clea gets rescued, but the people on Yavin don't want to risk exposing themselves too early. So they're even against the rescue of Clea. They finally do rescue her, bring her back, and then finally the information has made it to the right hands, and they're like, I don't believe it. Luthen's a kook. He's he's a wild man. He's a rebel, not a rebel, but like he's been doing things in his own maverick way for a while. They just don't trust him. They've all had bad experiences with him, and they basically want to ignore this piece of information. So it is fascinating that people are dying for this thing that, of course, we know is true, and they just want to ignore it because it's an inconvenient, ugly truth.
So frustrating, wasn't it? When Andor was there, it was almost Chinese whispers that he had to remember these key bits of information, and they were like, "Well, what do we do with that? Do we even believe it?" Horrible. But how's Lonnie? He had access to Dedra's emails, and he did not peek because he knew as soon as he peeked, he would get found out. So he waited for 2 years, then
Right.
peeked and found out everything. Yeah, so good.
And as soon as he did that, he's like, "They're gonna know." And
Yeah.
and
He knew he would give himself up, and now he's given himself up to Luthen as well. So he
that's
was
right.
on a hiding to nothing from the start.
They just basically show you over and over again in this show how this is hard work, right? Like this is, and by the way, really fascinating. Even and I'll mention this when we transition over to the Rogue One conversation. I thought this really fascinating that at no time in this entire show is there any of the woo-woo stuff you expect from Star Wars, but not even the characters, right? Obi-Wan Kenobi is right off screen, but no, he doesn't make a guest appearance here. Leia is right off screen, but she's not going to make an appearance. Darth Vader never mentioned at all in the course of the show. The Emperor gets mentioned a few times, just a few times. There's a couple of people mention the Jedi here and there in passing, but there's not like the Jedi is going to come back and rescue us all, right? So it's just fascinating that this is truly just the grunts doing the day to day. And they are just doing this not because they believe in some kind of, religious mission that they're all on, or they've heard communication from these spirit people, Jedis, etc. But they're doing this because like they're being oppressed. They're making a decision to make themselves uncomfortable, to give up their jobs and maybe even their lives for this belief system. And I just find it so interesting that at no point do we see any of the magical stuff. No one uses the Force to, raise a ship or smash ships together or anything like that. So it's just really fascinating to see things like at such a grounded point of view. And again, we see the human sacrifice of this, right? That like Lonnie doesn't even escape this, right? And that Luthen doesn't even want to risk that he will leak the information. He just kills him on the spot. So all of this is like brutally cold in a lot of ways. But this is what basically props up the heroics of Star Wars, is all this groundwork of all these people that basically are the originators of all the things that everybody loves in those Star Wars movies. And this series is saying this is the hard work right here for no reward at all, no glory, no reward. No one's going to tell stories about these people. I mean, of course, we have a Star Wars series about them, but I mean, in the history of Star Wars, people are not going to be talking about Luthen in the future, but he is, essential to this whole project.
I completely agree. Yeah, it's the working man that does all the jobs that need to be done they're not seeking glory, and glory is not going to come to them, and they're almost not going to get out. Only a few of them are going to get out.
Exactly.
If they're very, very lucky. I mean, Clea didn't even want to go to Yavin, and if she didn't, she would be dead.
Right.
They finally got her to Yavin, and she's somehow in this idyllic kind of forest wonderland that she has a friend. She makes a friend with Vel there, which I'm thinking a possible romance down the track. But
it felt a little romantic. I agree.
Yeah, a bit of a nice cuddle. But more, she doesn't have to run or hide or sneak in the shadows. And it's the first time since she was a very, very young child that she's without Luthen. So it's a new life for her.
Something subtle and very smart in this show, I have to say. Like last week, I was talking about how so much of what we were seeing in that cycle of episodes was about those relationships, right? Like how Andor and Bix and their relationship, but a lot of romantic relationships, like the marriage,
Mon Mothma's daughter.
And her husband, and like how that was a somewhat functional marriage. And you see, and the Dedra's relationship as well. So you see how there was a lot of these romantic entanglements and that dynamic, that sexual dynamic between these different characters. And even though we spent a lot of time with Luthen and Clea, I never mentioned them as part of that pairing because there just was no sexual tension between them. And now, I mean, I think it's very clever that they were smart enough to edit the film that way, because of course now we find out that it's not a sexual relationship at all. It is a paternal relationship between the two, a father-daughter relationship between them, and it's again, the sacrifices that people make for not only as mentors but as parents themselves. And of course, we could save the final moment for later, but of course, again, it's this whole idea of like what you sacrifice for your children, right, at the end.
Yes.
And of course, like you said, there's no glory, there's no for these people, but I guess it's like what they hope to build for their children.
That's right. Yeah, it's the idea of revolution and rebellion and sacrifice. But you're right. You're doing it for the person next to you, and you're doing it for the next generation or the generation to come, or after that. You almost can't see the end, but you have to do your job.
And let's talk about the final moments there. When we get to the very end, we see, I got to tell you, I wasn't that affected by this until I was thinking about it for this conversation and like putting my notes together. The idea in retrospect that part of the reason that Bix left a year earlier was because she was pregnant. And she knew if she stayed behind that that would probably be the end of Andor's activities, even more so, not only for her, but for now a family that they had. So the fact that she, in a way, made that decision to take that away from Andor, which of course, then this is again this idea of these sacrifices that it's very Machiavellian in a lot of ways. That of course she didn't do it to be cruel, but she didn't want him. She thought that the mission was more important. So there's a version of the world where Andor meets his son or his child, I should say. But then maybe the Death Star's still out there blowing up planets, right? So that's obviously a huge trade-off. And that decision was not made. Andor never knows about this, right? And there was something really tragic about that. And it's simultaneously very tragic when you think about what's going to happen to Andor and how he'll never know about this family. But then, of course, it's kind of triumphant because in the end, he does what he needs to do to prevent millions of deaths, right?
Oh, look, well, as soon as they showed that the farm planet, I knew we'd see Bix again. We saw the little droid B2, which is great to see him again and a couple of the old characters. Then I was like, saw Bix in the wheat field, and I was like, fantastic, she survived. And then when you saw the child, it got me, mate. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of burn-offs going around in this city, so there was a lot of smoke in the air, which I'm going to blame. But,
you're going to blame
mate, oh, the water coming out of my eyes was unbelievable. And just to, as you say, just to put the time back, the timeline of when the baby was obviously Andor's baby, and that's why she left, was just incredible. What a moment. Beautiful moment, and just a lovely sentiment to end on. In that, everyone's doing it for the next generation, for their children, and hopefully Bix's and Andor's child sees a better version of the galaxy because of their sacrifice.
And they don't appreciate us, Darren. They don't appreciate us. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to discuss as far as any character arcs. Oh, I mean, I have actually a couple. Yeah, go ahead. You can.
What about Partagaz, the head of the ISB? I mean,
that's exactly where I was going. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a brilliant ending. I mean, the way that scene played out, the way that Nemik's manifesto came back was just perfect. I mean, the way that when I heard the voice, I was like, oh, great. That's that guy from the first season. And he was very important about distilling the information about rebellion and selling it to people that really don't give a shit. And the fact that his voiceover, I was like, okay, we can use it as a voiceover. But the fact that Partagaz was listening to it and he understood how important it was, and the idea that it's being filtered throughout the galaxy and recruiting people was great. And to see him be affected, because I had a soft spot for him throughout the whole series. He just seemed like he was a little bit more human than the rest of the Empire, and he had just a brilliant moment there.
Great. And also, as you mentioned, going back to that idea of the sacrifices you make, people who are lost to the history of even this show, and of course history in general, but that this manifesto is now spreading across the universe, and it's not like anyone has his name attached to it, right? Like he literally says, "Who is that?" And he's like, "I don't know." But like you said, this manifesto is now going viral, and it's recruiting people, right? Probably a younger generation that is not jaded or afraid, as afraid, and they are building this revolution around the world. What did you think about his suicide, though? Do you think he's moved by the words, or do you think? I mean, they're there to arrest him, so do you think he just knew that if he went in front of the emperor, he's just going to be the fall guy for this? So do you think it was more of a pragmatic choice, or do you think it was something that was he was really moved by Nemik's manifesto and like seeing the wrongs of his ways, or a combination? What did you think?
That's a really good question. I think it was a combination. I mean, he's on the Empire side, so the fact that he's not necessarily moved by the words, but he's moved by the sentiment that he knows that they're on the wrong side. They're gonna lose
Right.
because the rebellion is so strong. He can feel the strength that they have, and he can feel that what he has been doing is not the way to beat these people. So I don't necessarily think that he's moved by the words, but the sentiment that he's going to be beaten, and the fact that he's got to go before Krennic and Palpatine. I think, I mean, that's going to end his life anyway. So he's
Right.
just taken the shortcut out, unfortunately.
What did you think about the conversation he has with
Krennic.
where he mentions that he can't protect him?
Oh yes, and he says good luck to
Yeah.
us both. Yeah. The Empire, they don't have each other's back, do they?
But you know what? There was a little camaraderie there, which I thought was, like there's kind of a history that is hinted at there, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, yeah, it's like we're all on our own. So, but yeah, the best we can do is hope for good luck for ourselves.
Of course, Star Wars in general was inspired by the history of the Nazism across Europe and the rise of Nazism and then the fall of it as well. But this is actually something that we've seen in these types of movements before, where, on the rise, everybody's very cocky and confident and feel very powerful. And then on the way down, they're always willing to point the finger and then they eat each other alive, basically. And then, of course, inevitably, when there's like some kind of truth and reconciliation at the end, they're all playing the victim. I just did it because I was forced to, or I had no other option, which, by the way, I think this show does give them some sympathy that these people are honestly not aware of the evil they're doing oftentimes, or just believe the propaganda, or just believe the convenient thing, which again is historically accurate in a lot of these corollaries in real life. But it is interesting that we see it here that even the ones who survive, like Dedra, of course, ends up in prison. So it's like, the chickens have come home to roost. And, and of course we know that a lot of these other folks will be dead soon thereafter as well. So
Just perfect. Another time that I just screamed at the TV. How perfect was it to see her in that uniform, having to get on program in another one of these prisons, whether it was Narkina 5 or some other one. Yeah, just perfect. And that brings up that scene of her with Krennic. Another incredibly directed scene where he's behind her and you can only see the bottom part of his face, and he's kind of disciplining her. He is ropeable that she has kept this information and that she's not shared this information, or that she's been sent it by mistake and hasn't told anyone about what she's sitting on. And the way that he pokes his finger on her head, which is just the
yes.
most violent thing. It's just, yeah, yeah. Dedra and Krennic were just great in that scene, and it was good to see her downfall finally.
Yeah.
And great to see the prison again.
Right. Yeah, the finger on the top of her head was so, and her reaction to it, she was stunned by it. Like she just felt like she was dehumanized. And again, so ironic that the way that they dehumanize anyone who's not on the Empire side. And it's as if that moment she realizes for the first time, it's as if her eyes are just open for the first time, that it can happen to her also. Like she thought she was protected by being on this side of the fence, but no, in the end, they'll eat their own. It all comes crashing down.
And it was the same room that where she met Cyril, where he was interrogated in the first season. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting symmetry there for sure. So yeah, and then the Rogues Gallery all round up, and as you mentioned, they all are headed right into Rogue One. We have that like flashing of all the different characters as they're like perfectly matched to their amazingly, right? That film is 10 years earlier now at this point, and everybody looks pretty great. They're still holding it together.
They do. I mean, another thing, this show also makes a liar of me. I was like, oh, I didn't really know what they were going to do with that droid. Did they really need to introduce it? The droid played such a great
He's so great
role in these 3 episodes that you needed that absolutely. before you see him in Rogue One, K2, I think his name is. He was just
Yeah.
so good, such a fantastic character. Whereas I thought, oh, do we really need to see that? Yes, we did. I was wrong. Yeah, brilliant. And the way that I feel like they might have de-aged Ben Mendelsohn a little bit at the end. The last shot, I don't know, of Andor, and then we see him again in Rogue One. Mon Mothma gets the different haircut, so she
Yeah.
matches
She matches. Yeah.
perfectly. But yeah, Cassian Andor, he's a good-looking man. He doesn't need to do
He's
much. Just
holding
wear
up.
that
He's holding up
jacket.
well.
Yeah, yeah, and put the blaster on his side, and he's straight into the next planet to meet this next informant.
I'm glad you brought up K2, by the way, because you have to bring him up in the fact that it's so intriguing, once again, watching Rogue One, that you have these characters from the film that are so memorable, but like fully defined in this is the Andor series is where we actually get some of their backstory. And not all in K2, just spending more time with him across the board here in this season of the show is so fun, so hilarious. What a great character he is. And yeah, really good call out that he's like waiting in the ship and he's like, hold on, I'm on my way. Just crushing everybody along the way. Just hilarious. Great weapon to have around you.
Oh my God, when he holds up the body of that guy as a shield, I was like, is this what we're seeing?
Hilarious.
The guy's eyes were open.
Anything else you wanted to bring up before we transition over to Rogue One?
Melshi as well gets a little bit more action as well. And I didn't realize that he goes straight into Rogue One and he rescues Jyn Erso from the transport straight away.
Oh, right.
And that's
right.
We see him training for it. In the last episode of Andor, he's helping train a bunch of crew, and they go straight into the next movie.
So I did do exactly what I mentioned last week. I actually thought I would take longer to rewatch, but nope, I just watched it all in one big batch. It did help, by the way, that these 3 episodes were, I think, maybe the shortest batch of 3. So it was basically like watching a 2-hour movie and then another 2-hour movie. I was thinking, like, am I going to watch like 3 hours and then another 2 hours? I'm like, it might be rough, but I was really surprised in revisiting Rogue One again, because I think I mentioned this. I had only seen Rogue one time, and I hadn't been a huge fan of Rogue One. I thought it was good, and I know people were crazy for it, saying it was like the best thing that they'd seen in Star Wars for a long time. But I was like, I had only seen it the one time, so I couldn't really put my finger on what I didn't love about it. And it's funny to watch it now and see what that Andor got right. Some of the things that I didn't like about Rogue One. But the first thing I want to compliment Rogue One for is this is directed by Gareth Edwards, which was coming off of that Godzilla reboot. And by the way, have you seen the trailer for the new Jurassic World movie?
No, I haven't.
He's directing it, and
okay.
I had no interest in seeing this. Zero interest. I've tried to watch the most recent Jurassic World movie multiple times. I even tried to watch it with my daughter one time, and each time I made it about half an hour in, and I just quit. I couldn't watch it. It was like unwatchable to me. And I love the original Jurassic Park. I even don't mind some of the scenes, not even the movies, but some of the parts of Jurassic World. I might watch like a certain action scene here and there, but I couldn't even make it through the most recent one. And I had no interest in seeing this. And then I saw the trailer for it when I was in the theater recently. And the trailer is absolutely stunning because Gareth Edwards can make some absolutely incredible images. Did you see The Creator, by the way? Have you seen The Creator?
I did see The Creator, yes. I was mixed on that.
Yes, I thought the script was a mess, and I thought the ending was ridiculous, to be honest. But it's just it's just some of the best sci-fi visuals we've seen. And my first note in watching Rogue One in that opening sequence was, "Is this the best looking Star Wars movie of all times?" Like might be. They need to learn from this. That set things in actual locations, don't shoot everything on the volume, and like have like a real sense of of urgency and just spontaneity to the images. So, I mean, I just thought was blown away by how beautiful the film looked. What's interesting about this, by the way, is and Gareth Edwards, his reputation is that he always had problems with scripts. So maybe he needs to work with other people to write the scripts. Anyway, we'll see how the new Jurassic World movie plays out. But visually, I'm always a huge fan of his visuals. If I'm not a huge fan of his films in general. And I don't know if you knew this, but there's a history of this film where he apparently delivered a film that they thought was like unreleasable, and then Tony Gilroy came in, did some reshoots, wrote some scenes, etc., and they massaged the material. I think a lot of what they added, by the way, is the stuff that I bumped against compared to Andor, which was all the like bringing in Leia and bringing in Darth Vader and like putting in all these connections to the Star Wars mythology. Where what I really liked, and maybe this is my bias now coming out of Andor, but what I really liked about Andor was the fact that like there's no talk about the Force, there's no talk about these magical beings or whatever. It is purely these rebels, literally infiltrating executing it's like a Dirty Dozen type movie, like literally where everybody ends up dead by the end, right? Just like in those movies. And but they complete the mission. And that's what I liked about it. So every time we cut away to like Darth Vader or something, I was like, okay, that's a little bit of a distraction. But apparently that's what fixed the original version of the film. But ironically, Tony Gilroy gets a whole series and he goes way back, strips it way back, even more so. So yeah, I was interested to see this in the context of Andor. Basically, what I would say is that Andor for me is so much deeper than Rogue One. Although Rogue One has some really great action sequences, a lot of action. There's a lot of action in Rogue One, so that's definitely a selling point.
Yeah, from my memory of watching it a couple of weeks ago, the last hour is just so good, and it's all action.
It's one giant action
just,
sequence. Yeah.
It's just a rollicking adventure, on
Right.
and on and on and on, and that was really thrilling to me. The first half was I was a little bit mixed on, and the CG characters of I think is Tarkin and Leia at the end, I'm completely off on. I thought that was just awful,
Terrible.
and yeah, and I feel like that was my reaction when I first saw it all those years in the cinema as well. And also the Vader bit in the middle where he meets Krennic, I was like, oh wow, we're seeing
Right.
Vader, okay. Didn't mind him at the end where he just tore everything apart. I thought that was fantastic, and the way that it meshed into Episode 4,
Right.
A New Hope, was genius. I thought I love seeing the ship, and I love seeing the sequences they just melded so well with the art direction from the 70s. The way that it just stitches all together was great. And even going back to Andor, some of when you see the X-Wings and you see the uniforms, the way that it just brings up this nostalgia of when you're a child and watching these 70s movies is just, yeah, it was very exciting. But yeah, mixed on Rogue One. I didn't love it as much as some people love it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that just goes to speak to the kind of miracle of Andor, that you're taking a film that I know people were very enthusiastic about it at the time. It got very positive reviews, but I was always kind of like, okay, it's leaning a little too hard into the mythology, and the story as it is pretty thin. We really don't know these characters very well. And that we went into, which honestly is not a very dense mythology, which is just like a stopgap between two movies, literally, just on this one mission. And it built this incredibly dense and detailed world. So it makes Andor even more of a miracle when I actually saw the original, film. To see like, oh wow, really? Like, I would never have suspected such a rich world would emerge from this particular film, which is a fun film. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, it's just not very dense with ideas, or these characters don't seem that they could maintain an entire series. But they, the Andor character turned out to be a really fascinating character, and
It
more
is
so the
fun,
characters
yeah.
that spun out from there.
And the fact that the first time we see Andor is that he kills
Yeah.
one of
Yes.
the spy in
Mhm.
cold blood, and oh my god,
He
this
learned that from
character! How
Luthen.
could he
He learned
do
that
that?
from Luthen.
But we've got two whole TV seasons where you can see how he does that and why he does that. It's just fascinating.
The character I want to see have his own movie is Donnie Yen as the blind Jedi. That's what I want to see at home.
Yeah, I feel like I was a bit mixed on that as well. I didn't get
Really?
enough of
Right.
what he's not. So he's not a Jedi. He's not, but he's a little bit of the Force. But he's a little bit other, also different mysticism as well. And his best mate is off it. So yeah, I thought it was interesting.
Have you seen John Wick 4?
I don't think so.
You haven't. Donnie Yen plays a blind assassin in that movie. Basically, I guess a spinoff of this in a way. But
Okay.
he, like every action scene he's in, he needs to get a spinoff movie. Every action scene he's in is incredible. He has at one point he puts a motion detector in a kitchen and kicks everybody's ass. And I'm like, oh, that's how he's going to do it. He's going to use this motion detector, and you think it's going to be some kind of like really advanced motion detector, and it literally is like it just clicks when someone walks past it, and it's incredible how he's able to use that to like take everybody out. It's every scene he's in John Wick 4. John Wick 4 for me is exhausting. It's too much movie. It's just like keep cramming stuff. Like any one of those action sequences is one of the best action sequences I've ever seen. But you have like 8 of them in one movie, and it's a crazy thing to say, but it's too much of a good thing. But anything he's in, every scene that Donnie Yen is in is fantastic. If you ever catch up on that one.
Yeah, it's on my list, but it just seems a bit overwhelming at the moment.
It is incredibly overwhelming. I mean, just when you think it can't get any crazier, there's this amazing scene where you're like watching him with this fire gun. I don't even know how to describe it. That is literally blowing people through walls, and the camera is like over his head, like following him around. And it's like you're suddenly inside of a video game. So there's like all these different aesthetics. There's all these different like it's not even like you're in a video game. At one point, it feels like you're inside of a musical. Like I said, it is 10 movies all happening one after the other. And I was totally on board for like the first hour. But by the end, I felt like it was a 4-hour movie. Like, oh my God, it's still not over. Like, that should have been turned into a mini series. And I could have watched each one of those episodes as its own standalone thing. But he plays blind again in that, and he's really, really entertaining.
He's been around a while too, so
It's
he must
amazing
be
how long he's
keeping
been
up
around.
his fitness regime.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this is like 10 years later, and still killing it. All right. Glad you wanted to cover that. I mean, they really nailed it. Do you think this is better than, I guess you do feel like this season was better? I thought it got off to a slow start. That first 3-episode arc, I got a little worried. I'm like, this is not the strongest, but I guess they were saving the best for last because it really picked up over the course of the season. But overall, do you feel like season 2 was stronger than season 1?
I think I do. Yes, I love both seasons, and I just love the story, and I just love the fact that we're seeing Star Wars that brought me back to seeing it as a child, and also now that I'm older, I want more depth in my
Yeah.
viewing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's given me depth, it's given me story, characterization, and thrills, and more adult themes, and I can't say enough about it because I enjoyed it so much. I just want to keep thinking about it, and I know that likely we're never going to get Star Wars as good as this again.
Right.
And I hate to say that, but they've showed us that this is a lightning in a bottle, and I just want to be happy that we've been able to sample it, and I'll be watching it again from the start
Yeah.
soon, because unless something else comes out that I'm very, very interested in, because it's just so joyous and it's just made me so happy. Even though I was just having a heart attack when Luthen and Claire and Dedra, and it was all coming together. My God.
So a little bit of news on the podcast, by the way, before we wrap up. You were right, Darren, by the way. Chris Weitz was one of the writers on Rogue One.
Yes,
And
he was.
Chris Weitz and his brother have a new science fiction show. And as you also pointed out, we're going from Stellan Skarsgård to Alexander Skarsgård in Murderbot. I've just started reading the first Murderbot book, which is very short. So I'm assuming that the series will be longer than the first book. I think there's been 7 of them at this point, and they are getting longer as they go along. But a very well respected science fiction series, comedic, but by the way, dealing with some of the same themes here with Andor. So maybe a more comedic view of being part of the Empire, but maybe a robot that has reprogrammed himself and wants to have a different life. Apparently, he just wants to watch TV and keeps getting inconveniently interrupted with having to do his duties of murdering. So I'm looking forward to that. Should be very funny on Apple TV starting this Friday. And that's only like 20-minute episodes or so. So it's supposed to be a very brisk watch. Anybody who wants to commit to that one, we will be sampling it and give us our opinion later next week. And also another breezy summer, seeming very fun genre show. We have J.J. Abrams reuniting with Josh Holloway from Lost fame, who hasn't really had a big star-making turn since Lost, which is like 15 years ago, but apparently getting rave reviews for playing this new driver, a mob driver set in the 70s, driving his Duster car through the desert and getting into in and out of mob trouble. So maybe a little correlation with our Mobland coverage as well. And we will be coming back to Mobland. Mobland is wrapping up. It's been very popular, by the way. There's so much negative takes on the bad accents of the characters or whatever. But you know what? So many people are watching that show, even if they're watching it ironically. It is coming back for another season for sure, considering how popular it's been. And we'll be back, probably covering it here and there, but definitely back for the finale, which is now 3 weeks away, I believe. What did you think of this week's episode? I did like the action, at least. We had some action.
Yeah, I was going to bring it up because finally something's happened.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
I love the action. And finally Eddie has done something again, even if it's just seduce Tom Hardy's daughter. But still, he's doing something, which is good to see. The action was great. I loved seeing the blood and the murder at the end. But yeah, I am stunned. I've seen a bit of internet reaction that one recap was very similar to the way that I've been seeing it. I think you've been seeing it as well, which is disappointing. They missed this, they missed that. But all the comments are just like, you've missed it. This show is brilliant. I love this show. So there's so much love for this show that
it's shocking.
I'm a little bit mystified. But this episode is really good.
Yeah, I thought this was a good episode too. And we have this new character, Kat, which turns out to be Catherine. And it looks like Tom Hardy is, and maybe this is I kind of touched on, maybe I was watching the show the wrong way in 2 ways now. One is maybe I was like, this isn't a show that's just setting up another season. Maybe it is. Maybe we're getting to the point where, Kat's the real mastermind. And now Eddie has this responsibility to her, and he's on some other kind of missions. And he, so there might be a bigger conspiracy, and Eddie gets to have more like spy-like adventures. This could be setting that up, so maybe that's why it's kind of felt like weird. Like, what am I supposed to be paying attention to right here? The other thing I think I'm missing out, and also why it's so popular, the Taylor Sheridan verse, the Yellowstone, and now Landman, which has been a phenomenal success. These shows don't work for me because they are these macho soap operas. They're really soap operas. And guess what? This is on Paramount Plus. I'm sure anybody who watched Landman gets Mobland fed to them afterwards, and they're probably loving it because it's another macho soap opera. So once again, maybe I am watching it the wrong way, but the audience who's raving about it, I've seen some of the same raves, and I'm like, what are you talking about? They're saying this is the next Game of Thrones. This is Cersei. This is Joffrey. I'm like, those characters were fascinating. These are not fascinating characters, but anyway. But the action was good, and we will come back to all of that, and hopefully we'll get a satisfying finale because, like I said, I think we are going to have another season of this considering the ratings.
Yeah, I'm in it now. I need to see what happens.
Yeah,
and finally, we're getting, it's called Mobland, and finally we're getting another couple of mobs.
There are a bunch of mobs now, right? Like they've all been introduced in the past week, and they're all working together, right? It's just like, Richie called the Mexicans, and the Mexicans called the Moroccans. What were they? What's this other one? So yeah, it's like the dominoes of mobs.
Finally, yeah.
Finally. So yeah, we will maybe be discussing that maybe in the very next episode. If we could cram it all in, talking about Duster, talking about Murderbot, and talking about Mobland, maybe get all that in there. Oh, and I've seen Final Destination. I saw a preview of Final Destination. It's a blast. So if you plan to see that, if you like this series, I'm talking to you, Darren. You're gonna like this. It's very self-aware. It's very funny. The opening murder set piece that they always have is like a real set piece, like a massive set piece, very satisfying. The comedy is maybe the best in the entire series. So if that's a recommendation, if you like this series, you're gonna like this movie. Basically, what I'll say.
Okay. All right, that's cool. But I must say, I think Mission Impossible comes out today or
Oh,
this
you get it
week. I'm not
early. We get
sure.
it. We get
Yeah.
it next week. We get it next week.
Or maybe it's next week. I don't know. Yeah, well, I am interested in possibly seeing that in the cinema because I
The
did like
reviews
the
have
last
come in
one.
on that. Not, for, I mean, they played it at Cannes, and the reviews have come in and they've been very positive. So I got my fingers crossed. I liked the last movie. It was a little discombobulated, but I did like it.
Oh, I
Um,
have no idea what went on. I just enjoyed it.
right. I'm not sure what was going on, but the set. I mean, the driving around in Roma was a great set piece. So I loved all the set pieces, even though I'm
Mm.
not sure what was going on plot wise. Yes. But hopefully we'll get a even more satisfying episode. But I'm always a fan. My daughter's actually currently or was currently watching one of the Mission Impossible movies when I came up here to record. But I got to go see the end of this Knicks game because they could win the series tonight. We started recording right at halftime, so this will be
Oh, all right.
if they could advance. This will be the first time they advance in 20 years,
Epic.
25 years. So this is quite a thing.
Okay, that's good news.
Um, all right, Darren. Thanks again for the conversation.
Cheers, Victor. Thank you.
All right. Talk to you soon.